The Federal Reserve takes a baby step, raising interest rates by a quarter percentage point as inflation starts to slow down. But the Fed gives a little clue that it's nearing the end of its hiking cycle. Samsung Electronics has unveiled its latest lineup at Galaxy Unpacked 2023, from the three phones in the Galaxy S23 series to the Galaxy Book 3. Seoul and Washington held their first combined air drill this year, flying advanced U.S. assets to the Korean peninsula. Washington says the drill proves its strong will to beef up the extended deterrence against threats from Pyongyang. We start in the U.S., where the Federal Open Market Committee took a widely expected baby step, lifting interest rates by a quarter of a percentage point, thanks to some encouraging signs in the U.S. economy. But it says the job's not fully done, signaling further rate hikes to come. Our 신새벽 leads us this morning.
The Federal Reserve has once again slowed its target interest rate increase as it raised policy rates by a quarter of a percentage point on Wednesday. But it hinted at further hikes to come.
Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 25 basis points. We continue to anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time.
The baby step hike matches market expectations. Last year alone, the Fed increased policy rates 7 times, making it the fastest increase since the 1980s. Accordingly, the U.S. benchmark interest rate jumped to a range of 4.5 to 4.75%. The Fed's latest decision comes amid 2 encouraging wage growth and inflation trends in the U.S. late last year, after inflation soared to 9.1% in June, a level not seen in over 40 years. After taking 4 consecutive giant steps of 75 basis point rate hikes from June to November last year, the Fed slowed the pace to 50 last month. Still, Fed officials signal there's still a long way to combat inflation.
While recent developments are encouraging, we will need substantially more evidence to be confident that inflation is on a sustained downward path.
The latest statement assessed the current inflation situation as eased but still elevated. Powell also warned that the job is not fully done, as he said he doesn't expect rate cuts this year. With Wednesday's announcement, the interest rate gap to Korea widened to as much as 1.25 percentage points, the largest gap in over 22 years. 신새벽, Arirang News.
Samsung has just revealed its new Galaxy series, the Galaxy S23. The phone comes with better quality cameras, long-life batteries, and a powerful processor. However, the slowing global demand for smartphones serves as a challenge as the new phones hit the shelves later this month. Our Kim Hyun-seng reports.
Samsung has just unveiled its first flagship phones of 2023, the Galaxy S23 series. The trio, the S23, the S23 Plus, and the S23 Ultra comes packed with better camera features and gaming capabilities. The front camera has been upgraded from 10 megapixels to 12 megapixels. Battery capacity gets a boost to 5,000 milliamperes per hour, which can comfortably last throughout the day with moderate usage. And the S23 series comes equipped with a powerful processor, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which, according to Samsung, has a 40% increased performance compared to its predecessor. Samsung has also gotten rid of the backside contour cut for the cameras, opting for a more stylish look. The phone's cameras use improved AI technology, which detects objects in front of the lens and shifts its conditions to take the optimal shot. Perhaps one of the most impressive features is the Astro Hyperlapse on the S23 Ultra, which allows users to take time-lapse photographs of stars without any special gadgets. The S23 series are also the first smartphones on the market to use Gorilla Glass Victus 2, making them more durable against drops and everyday wear and tear. However, some found first impressions to be underwhelming. Some online gadget reviewers called it a minor upgrade from the S22. But an expert says that the impressive horsepower of the S23 series will be best felt when used.
S23 is the, I think, best phone in the world right now, I think. In terms of experience, people can feel, wow, that's a lot much better.
The S23 also may not receive as much fanfare as usual due to tough economic times. Demand for new smartphones has fallen, with global smartphone shipments dipping almost 1/5 on-year in the last quarter of 2022. Samsung also earlier this week reported an earnings shock, an on-year plunge of 97% in its semiconductor division in the last quarter amid lower demand for semiconductors. The S23 also has to stand out from its competitors, Apple 14 and Google Pixel 7. The S23 series will hit the shelves worldwide on February 17th. Pre-orders in South Korea start on the 7th. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's flagship automakers Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors posted record January sales figures in the U.S. market. According to Hyundai Motor America, the company sold a total of 52,011 units in January, up 9% from the same month a year earlier. Kia also announced that it had broken sales records for 6 consecutive months up to January. Kia sold nearly 52,000 units in January, up 22.3% from a month earlier, while electric car sales jumped 128% compared to a year ago. President Yoon paid a visit to the nation's southeastern city of Gumi on Wednesday. Attending a signing ceremony at the headquarters of one of South Korea's major manufacturers of silicon wafers for semiconductors, President Yoon called for further investment as chips are the backbone of the country's economy and also a national security asset. Our presidential office bureau chief Moon Gun-young reports.
President Yoon has pledged all-out efforts to help Korean chip manufacturers overcome the current down cycle, as semiconductors are, quote, the nation's security asset that underpins the economy. At a signing ceremony Wednesday marking SK Siltron's nearly $1 billion in planned investment to install new silicon wafer production facilities in the nation's southeastern city of Gumi, President Yoon vowed to spare no assistance for companies making bold and preemptive investments.
반도체 산업은 우리 수출의 20%를 담당하는 경제의 버팀목이자 국가 안보 자산입니다. 소재나 부품, 장비 국산화를 위해 더욱 힘을 써야 하고 또 메모리 가격의 하락세, 경기 침체에 따른 수요 약화에도 선제적으로 대응해야 합니다.
Yoon called for more investment, adding competitors across the world continue to pose threats to South Korea's chip industry by employing export restrictions, subsidies, tax benefits, and other measures. His remarks come as the nation's major chip makers suffered disappointing earnings in the fourth quarter of last year amid a global downturn in the semiconductor industry. Earlier in the day, the South Korean leader stopped by Kumho National Institute of Technology in Gumi, where he stressed the importance of training semiconductor experts.
우리가 어려운 여건 속에서도 산업화에 성공하고 이런 경제 대국으로 성장할 수 있었던 것은 결국 우리는 사람에 투자하고 사람을 양성했기 때문입니다. 특히 지금 이 4차 산업혁명과 글로벌 기술 패권 경쟁 속에서 국가가 살아남는 길은 오로지 뛰어난 과학기술 인재들을 많이 길러내는 것입니다.
You noted that the institute was established under former President Park Chung-hee's initiative to create and nurture the country's science human resources pool in the 1970s. Park Chung-hee is credited with leading the nation's economic growth in the 60s and 70s, which reshaped and modernized South Korea, but has also been criticized for his authoritarian way of ruling the country for 18 years. He's also the father of ex-President Park Geun-hye, who was ousted in 2017 due to a corruption scandal. 문건영, Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. have conducted their first combined air training of this year, flying advanced U.S. assets deployed to the Korean peninsula as a show of force against North Korea's threat to regional security. Seoul's Defense Ministry said on Thursday that the two allies had conducted the drill the day before, featuring South Korea's F-35A fighters, U.S. B-1B strategic bombers, along with F-22 and F-35B fighter jets. The drill shows Washington's will to strengthen its extended deterrence or its policy of supporting allies that come under conventional or nuclear attack. The ministry added that the training also shows the allies' determination to keep South Koreans safe from any provocation made by North Korea. Going forward, Seoul and Washington plan to bolster joint air exercises with further deployments of U.S. strategic assets. Just a day after Seoul and Washington's recent air drill, Pyongyang warned the U.S. of a tit-for-tat response to any military attempts by the U.S. According to its state-run media on Thursday, the North's Foreign Ministry said the regimes will respond with a, quote, a nuclear for a nuclear, a confrontation for a confrontation. The comment cited U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd Austin's pledge to deploy more American strategic assets to the Korean peninsula made during his recent visit to Seoul. The North's official claimed the regime's nuclear capabilities are ready to counter any challenges now and in the future, and that it has no interest in engaging in dialogue as long as Washington keeps its hard-line stance. South Korea is preparing to test a powerful conventional missile in the near future. Now, without disclosing the name of the missile, a military source said on Wednesday the country's Agency for Defense Development is likely to test fire a high-powerful missile at the Anheung launch site in Chungcheongnam-do province. The military has issued a navigational warning around the area, raising speculation the launch may be in the next few days. The missile is believed to be the Hyundai, dubbed South Korea's monster missile, which is capable of carrying warheads weighing 8 or 9 tons and falls on its target at 10 times faster than the speed of sound. Now, this means it could target deep underground tunnels and bunkers with an effect similar to that of nuclear weapons. Once deployed, the Hyundai would be a crucial part of Seoul's 3-axis system to respond to North Korea's nuclear and missile development. A week after securing promises of tank support, Ukraine is now pressuring its Western allies to provide fighter jets. While the allies have remained firm that fighter jets will not be part of military support, the U.S. has announced plans to send medium-range rockets to Ukraine. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
During a trip to Paris, Ukraine Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov asked France for further support, asking for fighter jets that his country needs. According to Defense Chief, tactical aircrafts are a crucial part of any country's air defense system, and the same holds true for Ukraine. He remained optimistic that soon enough, countries will begin sending fighter jets to Ukraine to use in the fight against Russia, with Reznikov mentioning that the request for tank support, like the German-made Leopard 2, was initially rejected before later being approved. While talks between the defense chiefs of Ukraine and France ended without any conclusion on fighter jet support, Paris agreed it will send 12 additional Caesar howitzers and has discussed training Ukrainian pilots to fly French fighter jets as part of military assistance to Kyiv. France also agreed to provide radar capable of detecting enemy aircraft at a distance of 250 kilometers. Meanwhile, according to officials in Washington, the U.S. is preparing to offer Kyiv a $2.2 billion military aid package, which is expected to include medium-range rockets. The U.S. Congress has approved more than $110 billion in aid since the war began last February. In addition, the European Union will increase the number of Ukrainian troops it aims to train to 30,000 as it looks to continue its support for Ukraine's fight against Russia. The latest figure is double the 15,000 troops the bloc had initially promised in November 2022. The plan will be announced officially at an UN-Ukraine summit in Kyiv on Friday, as European allies continue to step up their military support for Ukraine. 이승재, Arirang News.
Hunting for a new job with a higher salary and better work-life balance is nothing new, but recent data shows that more and more people are making bold decisions to leave their jobs after only a short period of commitment. Now, what's behind people being comfortable with leaving and settling somewhere new? For more, we're joined by Dr. Sarah Park. She's the head of Korea at GP. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Now, let's first talk about the trend itself. More people are becoming interested in leaving their current workplaces for new jobs after only a short commitment period. Why? Why is that? What's the motivation behind the move?
Right. That's actually a very good question. And for background, quitting and job changing are indeed a trend. And I'm sure most people have heard of the terms the Great Resignation and quiet quitting in 2022. It's been talked about quite a bit. I would say that it peaked last year in 2022 because of the ongoing global talent crunch that companies are seeing, and many industries were lamenting the lack of talent and HR and talent because, those different sectors really had a difficult time finding talent to fill in those spaces that companies were actively and aggressively looking for. In fact, the global employee survey that was conducted by GP at the end of last year showed that 60% of South Koreans would consider changing jobs if the right offer came up, because only 44% of Koreans surveyed were happy in their current roles, meaning that more than half people that were surveyed are unhappy in their current roles. And I think that can speak as to the job culture that might exist now in this part of the world. It could be that companies might be a bit aggressive in the way they're expecting employees to commit to their roles. And the new generation are different than older generations, and they like to have a position that really matches their personal needs and their equality and their corporate social responsibility.
Right. As you have just mentioned, there was the Great Resignation in the U.S. that described the record number of people who left their jobs since the beginning of the pandemic, and also the quiet quitting, which means doing the very minimum required at a job without effort or enthusiasm. Now, why do you think these work trends still exist?
I think these work trends, it would be difficult to say that they still exist, because we are not so sure that this trend would continue in 2023, particularly in the tech space. We do see that the overall talent shortage is actually slowly improving, and I think that's due to the influx of talent seeking jobs in the job market based on the massive layoffs that have occurred at the end of 2022 into 2023. So we see that companies are really being more prudent in how they hire and how much they hire because of the predicted oncoming recession that we see coming down the year. And it seems that work performance is going to be a bigger issue for companies as they look to cut out inefficiencies. And they would like to make sure that they are not hiring people who are not ready to commit themselves to the company.
Right. Then, is there any positive way to look at these phenomena? Because some may feel it's good if people can find more favorable opportunities for themselves, while others can also argue that it's neither good for companies or individual workers. And when it comes to nurturing talent, business investment and growth, are these trends good or bad? What do you think?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It's definitely a good thing in the sense that it gives companies more responsibility to be better employers and to take care of their employees on this sense in HR and in the company practices and the culture that they follow. On the other hand, it does encourage a quality of laziness that could occur, that employees feel that they don't have to put in their full into a company and begin to just lay back and really perform the minimal amount of work. So I think having a balance between the two, having a balance between companies' expectations and the way they treat their employees versus workers, how they perform work and to what level of quality they perform work, finding the balance between those two can really help companies and employees have a really sweet spot in between.
Right. Finding that balance has always become the crucial part of anything when it comes to life or work, right?
Right, that's for sure.
All right. Thanks for your insights this morning.
Thank you.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
Let's start in Myanmar, where the military junta have extended the country's state of emergency by a further 6 months.
Well, that's right. The announcement was made on Wednesday local time on the 2-year anniversary of the military coup. Now, it means that the junta can continue to control all government functions, including the legislative, judicial and executive powers. Now, in a state broadcast, junta leader General Min Aung Hlaing said the extension was necessary as unusual circumstances in the country remain. He also said more time is needed to prepare for peaceful and stable elections, and elections cannot be held in Myanmar during a state of emergency. Although no new date for elections has been given, Hlaing hinted that they could take place in August. But watchers have expressed doubts over the legitimacy of elections, saying they would likely favor the military staying in power. Now, turning over to the Australian outback, where a radioactive capsule that had been missing for 2 weeks has been found. The 8mm by 6mm capsule was located south of the town of Newman on the side of the road after a search that spanned 1,400 kilometers of roadway. The find was described as akin to locating a needle in a haystack. The coin-sized capsule was lost after it fell from a truck that was traveling to Perth from a mine site in Western Australia. Now, according to authorities, the cesium-137 capsule used in radiation gauges for the mining industry could have posed a significant public health risk, as it's capable of causing skin damage, burns, or radiation sickness. Now, the world's oldest professional football player, Kazuyoshi Miura of Japan, is set to continue his 37-year-long career in Portugal. The 55-year-old has signed for the Portuguese second division team Oliveirense on loan from Japanese side Yokohama FC. King Kazu, as he is often called, will turn 56 later this month, but the forward is showing no signs of slowing down. He has previously said that he plans to retire from football at the age of 60. Miura began his professional career in 1986 with Brazilian side Santos. He spent most of his career in Japan, but has also played for clubs in Italy, Croatia and Australia. Miura has also scored 55 goals in 89 matches for Japan's national team. And finally, Scotland's Shetland Islands are saying goodbye to the Yule with their annual Viking Fire Festival. Called Up Helly, the over 140-year-old festival traditionally takes place from January to March across Shetland's various communities. And in the region's biggest town of Lerwick on Tuesday, 1,000 participants called geysers dressed in Viking gear and marched in procession to celebrate their Norse heritage. This year saw women being allowed to participate for the first time after the previous ban was lifted, this following decades-long efforts to be included.
Good morning. Bitter cold air returns to much of South Korea with cold wave alerts expanding to more parts of the country. Morning temperatures are 5 to 10 degrees Celsius lower than the same time yesterday, and the biting winds are making it feel colder at about -9 degrees here in the capital. Afternoon highs will also be 2 to 6 degrees lower than yesterday. Seoul topping out at about 2 degrees, Daegu, Gwangju at 6 degrees, hovering right around the norms with sunnier skies in the afternoon. And thankfully, air quality has improved to a normal level. Meanwhile, East Coast regions remain dry with dry weather alerts now in place for 2 consecutive weeks, including in Busan. So fire safety is a must, and be sure to apply a good amount of moisturizer and drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. The weather looks uneventful with a gradual warming trend. Skies will remain fairly bright with no precipitation in the forecast for East Coast regions. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. Do stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching.